Good day to all of you. Today I will talk about Wordsworth's views on the function of poetry, his views on the nature and character of a poet, and about the process of poetic creation. So, what is poetry? Poetry is communication, and it is his own pleasure that the poet communicates. Traditionally, the function of poetry was supposed to be both to instruct and delight. But for Wordsworth, the function of poetry is primarily to give pleasure. However, his conception of pleasure is an exalted one. Poetic pleasure is not mere idle amusement like some kind of an indulgence, like rope dancing or some such triviality. Serious poetry provides pleasure of an exalted kind. It is the pleasure which results from increased knowledge and understanding. He considers poetry superior to both history and philosophy as well as to science. Now, Wordsworth regards it as the most philosophical of all writings, the impassioned expression that is in the countenance of all science. The appeal of science is merely to the intellect, but poetry complements science by adding feeling to its truth, and by its imaginative treatment, it makes people more fully aware of them. Now, these were his views on the function of poetry, which was that its main function is primarily to give pleasure. And now, his views on the nature and character of a poet. Now, poet is essentially a man speaking to man. He differs from other men not in nature, but merely in the degree of his gifts. He is a man of greater sensibility, observation, reflection, and imagination, and of greater powers of communication. Now, these are some of the prerequisites or some of the qualities which Wordsworth felt a poet must have. He can therefore comprehend truths to which others remain blind. A common man will pass by a garden but will not pay much heed to the flowers and the leaves. But a person having a poetic sensibility, who observes, who reflects, who imagines, he will see into the heart of things. So, what does a poet do? How is he different? That he can communicate his own understanding of the soul of things to his readers. Thus, the preface makes it clear that Wordsworth's view of his own calling is a very exalted one. Now, what are his views on the process of poetic creation? Wordsworth said, all good poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. Now, this is a very memorable line, but it should not be taken too literally. Nothing could be further from Wordsworth's mind than to equate poetry with a rapid flow or gush of emotions. This statement occurs twice, and each time in a context which describes intense mental as well as emotional activity. For Wordsworth, the process characteristically begins in a state of calm with the remembering of some past emotional experience. Excitement gradually increases until the poet is almost reliving the experience, but with a difference. Now, what is the difference? The difference is that the emotion has now been modified by thought and related to many past thoughts and feelings. The germinal experience has in fact been or is in the process of being understood and evaluated, and it is by this means that the ensuing poem acquires its worthy purpose. Thought and emotion, conscious and unconscious elements continue their intimate interaction until the spontaneous overflow begins. That is, until these elements are ready to combine in a poem and begin the work of shaping it. So, these were Wordsworth's views, but many found faults with these views. Coleridge criticized Wordsworth's views in the preface and said that there was needless obscurity and there was extreme elaboration and constraintness of its diction. Another critic called it a propaganda pamphlet, which suffered from the sin of exaggeration and overemphasis. Another critic said that Wordsworth has gone to extreme and it is not a tactful piece of writing. So, today we've done Wordsworth's views on the function of poetry, the views on the poet and his character, and the process of poetic creation, and also what the critics and Coleridge felt about the preface. We end here.